more. It's the heart of the art form that we all adore. Your friendly neighborhood comic book store. Out among the stacks of new releases, browsing with your future new best friends. You're gonna find a book you love to pieces. The girl behind the counter recommends dollar books and shelves of graphic novels. Titles old and new, you'll find them all. With action figures, board games, toys, and models to add to your new Comic Wednesday haul. The comic book store, the comic book store. 'Cause that's where the books live, but it's also much more. It's the heart of the art form that we all adore. Your friendly neighborhood comic book store.
All right. Welcome to Source Material Live. I'm your host, the mandated reporter, and frankly, I'm mortified, Mr. Mark Radulich. And tonight, we are looking at a book. Just looking at a book. Yeah. Just looking at a book we felt like talking about. This is The Man of Steel by Brian Michael Bendis. This was published over 6 issues with an extra special DC Nation 0 attached to it. And then it was bound up on October 2018 into a trade paperback or hardcover. Joining me to talk about this is Chris Sheehan. How you doing, sir?
Oh, how are you? It's been a long time since I've read this. I mean, it's weird how in our older ages here, it feels like time is both like things are just yesterday or they're 100 years ago, and they're really the same amount of time away. Certain things I did 10 years ago feel like yesterday, but reading this Man of Steel comic, which I read probably 2 years ago, feels like it's been hundreds of years ago. It's very, very bizarre. It's an odd sensation.
So, let me ask you, when the announcement was made that Bendis was leaving Marvel, and he was heading over to DC, and that he was going to, I think this was the start of his run, right? Whatever he was doing with Superman was starting here, if I remember correctly.
It started in Action Comics number 1000. There was a short, Action Comics 1000 was basically everything that's wrong with anniversary issues, in that rather than actually like doing a story, it turned into a love letter to this character, which is what every goddamn anniversary issue is now. So it's like, we can't just have a good story. It's just like, no. I need to tell my story where, we show Superman in the 40s. Oh, no. I need to do mine where we show him in the 60s. Stop. Just tell a damn story. Just give us one story, not this love letter bullshit. That's just a cop-out to me. Really, really played out. But Bendis was the final story in Action Comics number 1000, which sort of kind of kicked off his run and allowed him to make 3 or 4, he's wearing the red underpants outside again comments, like we all knew he would. So that's where it started. But when the announcement was made that he was coming over to DC, nobody knew what he was going to do. Nobody had any idea where he was headed, and I remember the reaction was a little bit mixed. I mean, over the years, DC's taken their share of Marvel heavy hitters and Marvel only sort of creators, and Marvel's done the same with DC. And but with DC, it's usually like really, really touted. Back in the 70s, Kirby is Coming was on the cover of a lot of books because they made the tremendous coup of grabbing one of the architects of the Marvel Universe and bringing him over to DC, where he could mostly bore us with Fourth World stuff, but still, he came over, and it was a big deal. In the mid-2000s, Adam and Andy Kubert went over to DC, and though they did some work there in their younger days, this was before they were established as like main Marvel cornerstone artists. They went over, and it's like, holy cow, we have the Kuberts over here. 2009 or so, Mark Bagley went over. Mark Bagley got his start in the Marvel Tryout comic. He had only done Marvel stuff. So him coming over to DC to join Kurt Busiek on the weekly Trinity series was huge. And then he did JLA. And, I mean, Bagley's not everybody's cup of tea, but it was a big deal. It was a get. Into the New 52, John Romita Jr. came over. That dude is Marvel through and through. And despite the fact that he's probably not everybody's favorite nowadays, his style is it's either comfort food or it's not. I've learned. And it has degraded a lot from his glory days back on Uncanny X-Men and Daredevil and stuff like that. But still, it was a big deal. They announced Bendis is coming over, and the reaction online was just like, oh, shit. You know, it was either oh, shit, or and not in the amazed way, but the, oh, come on. Or it was like, ha-ha, take that, Marvel, we got one. It was not anything like, ooh, I can't wait to see the stories he's going to tell. Oh, I can't wait to see what he does. Mm-hmm. It was more a, our team is better than your team, or a, oh, please, no. And I was in the oh, please, no category because Bendis was I want to preface by saying I like Bendis. I like Bendis' work. It probably doesn't sound like it, but I do. I own probably 95% of his output as a pro. I mean, I own thousands of comics with Bendis' name in them. So it's like I don't dislike the guy. But anytime you have a creator quite as prolific as a Bendis, their tics become more and more apparent, right? Mm-hmm. I mean, you start to recognize certain verbal tics, certain scenes that play out, certain archetypes, certain boxes that he puts characters into just so he can write them a certain way, where it's sort of true to the character, but it's like amped up. Like mm-hmm. Lois Lane is going to become the ultimate snark bot because that's how Bendis writes women. And okay, Lois can be a little snarky, but not this goddamn snarky. That's just how Bendis does it. So I was worried about this, and I had grown tired. I had grown fatigued of the Bendis style. It's one of the reasons I stopped reading Marvel Comics is because the Bendis virus spread throughout Marvel. So everybody else started to write just like him. We had these overly talky scenes. We had action being really, really put on the back burner here. And I mean, I don't need action all the time. But I mean, when you have 2 issues of Avengers talking heads, it's like, okay, let's move on here. We paid $8 for this. Can we please do something here? And then it's like, hey, something's happening. What should we do? Well, let's go talk to S.H.I.E.L.D. Maybe Maria Hill will let us do this. So then we can issue and a half of them pleading a case to Maria Hill so she can be all snarky and sarcastic at them until it's finally like, oh, okay, well, the world's going to end. Maybe you should do something. Then we get 3 pages of a fight. It's just the Bendis style. It permeated through Marvel. I think it hit a tipping point for me when I bought it was an issue of Uncanny X-Men #1, one of the many Uncanny X-Men #1s, that started with like a 6-page scene with S.H.I.E.L.D. Nothing to do with the X-Men. This is Uncanny X-Men #1, and it opens with Maria fucking Hill. It's like, you gotta be kidding me. So that's one of the reasons I left Marvel. Then I see he's coming over to DC, and he's probably bringing some of his friends with him. And it's like, oh, come on. I'm gonna have to leave DC now. And actually, I did. So it's like, I had enough. The tics were there. They were noticeable. That's not Bendis specific. I felt the same way about Jeff Johns, Peter David, Grant Morrison, my favorite writers. You just get tired of them after a while. And I was tired of Bendis. And I had my fingers crossed that there was one character in the DC universe I did not want him to touch. And it was Superman. And here we are. He does Superman. And he opens up his toy box, which only has like 3 or 4 toys left in it, and he pours them all over Superman. And, well, I mean, we'll get there.
You answered a lot of the questions that I had for you. You know, like what was your reaction? What did you expect? What did you hope? Actually, you didn't touch on that. What did you hope Bendis would do with Superman? I mean, knowing what you know about Bendis' writing, and I know that there were some things you wanted him to not do, things you wanted him to avoid. You already spoke about that. But if you could have gotten in Bendis' ear and like, hey, you got Superman, do this. What is do this?
Well, first I would have said you should have read Superman for a long time instead of just posting a picture of you reading an omnibus on it on Twitter so you can get a bunch of likes. You know, maybe actually give a shit about the character. Maybe actually do a little bit of homework on the character. Maybe try to do something that doesn't fall into the Bendis box. We don't need an everything we thought we knew was wrong launch. We did not need that. That's not something that is necessary for every single character, much less one that's been around for like 85 years now. We don't need secret identities coming out of the bag. Another Bendis trick. We don't need that shit. We don't need the overly talky stuff. We can have some talk, sure. I mean, it is a story. But I didn't want that. What I would have wanted from him, God, I couldn't even tell you. Because, I mean, this was coming off of the Rebirth run, where we had action being written by Dan Jurgens. I mean, a classic, a traditional Superman writer. And in Superman Volume 4, I believe it was, that was, I think it was Peter Tomasi and Patrick Gleason were on that. And, I mean, those runs had run. They had run their course. I mean, this is 2018-ish. They started up in 2016, so we had 2 years. And for a while, these books were bi-weekly because Rebirth was bi-weekly. So, I mean, we had a lot of books under the Jurgens and Tomasi run. It had played itself out. It maybe went a little too traditional. Of course, contextually, I mean, relatively traditional, because I mean, we still had John, we still had his, Superman's son, we still had Jor-El being back, we still had some things that were current year and pressing, but it was very traditionally told, and it was like a revisitation on a lot of old Superman tropes here. So I don't know that would have worked for Bendis to just redo everything that Jurgens and Tomasi did. Really, I mean, I really don't have much room to criticize because I don't have a better option. I just know the things that I didn't want were exactly what he did. I mean, there's got to be other stories he could have told besides let's give up the secret identity and let's show that everything we thought we knew was wrong.
All right, so big summary for this. Genre-defining author Brian Michael Bendis makes his triumphant debut at DC Comics as an alien being comes to Earth to kill Superman like you do, and finish the mission he first started decades ago, destroying the planet Krypton and killing every last Kryptonian. One of the genre's greatest mythologies is turned on its head in Man of Steel. Exactly what Sheehan didn't want. A new era begins for Superman as a threat named Rogol-Zar comes to Earth to put an end to Superman and his cousin Supergirl. How will the last son and daughter of Krypton survive a threat that destroyed almost all of their kind? As his world comes down around him, Clark Kent must also wonder what happened to his wife and son, Lois Lane and Superboy. Brian Michael Bendis, the scribe behind... All right, I don't need to read any of that. All right, So basically we have two things going on at the same time. A talky version of Doomsday with no nose.
It's Doomsday. I mean, this is straight out of Ooh Creepy Monster 101.
Right.
I mean, this is the most uninspired character design. You stack this guy up next to any monster, and it's like, which one's him? I don't know.
Not only that, but it was like, we have this idea. Let's kill Superman. Okay, well, we need something to do that. Great. Big monster. Mm-hmm. And that's all Doomsday needed to be.
That's all he was ever going to be. Yeah, it was supposed to be.
and then, and it's like, so Brian Michael Bendis, like, what's the first thing you're going to do with Superman? Bigger Doomsday that talks. Like, ugh.
I'm just surprised he didn't have Doomsday show up for a panel and get punched by Rogol-Zar, just to show, like, I'm the alpha now.
Yeah. Just got to throw him in the pool.
I mean, that's what Doomsday did with Darkseid. I mean, Doomsday punched out Darkseid to show that I'm the big guy now. It's just a rite of passage for monsters.
So, Rogol-Zar is, over the course of 6 issues, is said to have been, has decided that Kryptonians, and nobody else in the universe, Kryptonians will, with their science, leave their planet, colonize other places. They will spread their knowledge and their love, and we can't have that.
No.
That was the first thing that made no sense to me. The logic of why Rogol-Zar decided Kryptonians and nobody else needed to go made no sense in terms of why are you focusing just on the Kryptonians and not on any other alien race that is capable of the very same thing? Yep. All he said was their science will lead them to expansion. Their expansion will take them across the universe, and they will spread. Right, mm-hmm. but any spacefaring alien race is capable of doing that. So why are the Kryptonians bad and not
Earthlings?
Well, I was going to say, and not. I'm trying to think of another alien race that's out there, but why not the New Gods? They're an alien race.
Mm-hmm.
They're capable of space exploration.
And putting people to sleep.
Any number of alien sectors guarded by the Green Lanterns.
Mm-hmm.
You know, why... And did you get a sense of, like, did I miss something in this story? Why the Kryptonians were especially bad in his eyes?
You know, the only thing I can think of is that they were the first ones he saw doing it. Because, I mean, that is a big part of Jor-El's story. You know, he was the one who... And, I mean, it's weird, because he foresaw Krypton blowing to pieces.
Mm-hmm.
And so he poured a lot of his time and effort into a test space program, right? That was his thing. He was kind of looked at as a nut by the council on I was going to say the council on Krakoa.
Yeah, he was Chicken Little. The sky is falling until it fell.
Yes, until it actually fell. So the only thing I can think of is that Rogol-Zar saw this first. Maybe that's just the side of the galaxy he started on. I don't know. It's the only thing that can make sense. It's kind of no-prizing it, and it's kind of tunnel visioning it. But yeah, I mean, look at the Legion of Superheroes. How many different alien races are a part of the Legion? I mean,
yeah.
There are so many. Ron, Thanagar, Durlan. I mean, there are just tons of planets capable of doing exactly what he feared.
Why can't the why do the people from those two planets that you just mentioned,
mm-hmm.
why do they get to live, but the Kryptonians don't? See, that's what I mean. And you're just taking guesses. You're taking stabs in the dark to answer my question.
Yeah.
It's
I'm
not in the
text.
Blanks.
No, it's not at all.
And that's my first complaint about this is... welcome to guys complaining about comics. That's my first complaint about this is he gave a reason and he was like, well, you know, his motivation is all Kryptonians have to go and he missed 2 of them. Okay? Mm-hmm. I'm with you so far. And he explained why all the Kryptonians have to go. Well, we don't want colonialization from this one particular group of aliens. All right? But why? Moving on.
Because
that's what I mean.
I said so.
You know, like he took us part of the way and then was like, I'm gonna tell you this other story now. Which brings me to the second thing Superman is dealing with. Jor-El, and maybe this was explained in a different comic, but I don't know if you heard, no, you couldn't have been, because I didn't really talk about it publicly. I think I mentioned it on one podcast, but and maybe I talked about it with you. I don't even remember anymore. My problems with House of M.
Mm-hmm.
My problem with House of M was I made some minor criticisms in a separate chat, and I basically said I wish we had spent more time on this world, getting to know it before we destroyed it, because I think it was a very interesting place. And the answer I got back was you needed to read all the ancillary materials, and I went,
yes,
no, fuck you.
About this. Yeah,
okay, yeah, okay, we did talk about this, and I went, no, I'm not doing any other homework. Tell your story in the story you're telling.
The story. Yeah.
Right. So, which brings me to, I don't want to relitigate all that again, but it's the same problem here with his son. Jor-El comes in and he's like, your son's got all kinds of problems. He needs to go, and we need to have, you know, a journey through space so that he can be better. Better than what? What's wrong with him? Why is he bad? Why is Jor-El suddenly involved in Lois and Clark raising this child?
Because Bendis decided he wanted to age Jonathan Kent, and that was the only way he can do it.
Okay, so was this dealt with in any other book?
The lead up to it? Well, when Rebirth started, this is going back to spring of 2016.
Okay, I'm noticing a theme here. I had to have read Rebirth before I read any of this.
It's sad but true. There was a fellow by the name of Mr. Oz who would show up on the fringes of Superman pages, and we were led to wonder, who is this mysterious Mr. Oz? And it was a fun time to be a fan because so many weird... Because Rebirth was something that none of us had experienced before, in that everything was literally suddenly on the table again. Anything from any era of DC could come into play. Golden Age, Silver Age, Modern Age, everything. So people were guessing, like, who is this Mr. Oz guy, and what's his connection to Superman? Who the hell could this be? Far out things like, God, like a guy who would show up in like one panel in a New Adventures of Superman comic from 1983. You know, people were throwing all this stuff out and theorizing, and it was a great time. and it was Jor-El.
Okay.
And I mean, it was just like we were just done. Nobody, we were all tired of it. And I mean, Rebirth was interesting in that they had to find a way to reconcile all of the Supermans that we've ever seen into one. So the New 52 Superman was suddenly now part of the Prime Superman. All of the Supermans that have been read were now merged into one. So like the stories were all coming together, and they did it in a very creative way. Maybe not the cleanest and neatest way, but it was creative enough. And it was enough for us to like comic book squint at it and be like, yeah, okay, that makes sense, and just move on. We're past it. We explained it. We looked at it for a second. Let's continue. Let's not dwell on it like we always do. Jor-El comes back, which, I mean, I don't like the fact that he's back because
how is he back? Didn't he die?
He's just back.
Okay.
He escaped. He made it.
Hey, you know what? You know what? And so this is the portion of our show where I bring up a movie you haven't seen.
Yes,
but,
I love it.
Okay, so in the Fast and the Furious movies, in Fast and the Furious 4, Letty dies. Letty is played by Michelle Rodriguez, and she is Dom's girlfriend. Dom is Vin Diesel.
Okay.
So she dies in that movie. I don't need to go into why. She just does. And my kids have now seen every time we go see the Fast and the Furious movies, which are now playing each one has been playing every Friday night in theaters until F9 comes out. So, like, for 8 weeks, every single one of the Fast and the Furious movies has, like, a 7:15 showing in my local theater.
Gotcha.
And since number 3, because we watched the first 2 at home back at the beginning of the year, we've gone to the theater to see them leading up to F9, which I'm taking my kids to. So I was like, okay, I haven't seen half of these, let alone my kids. So like, we're gonna watch them all. And before each and every one of these, the trailer for F9 plays, and in F9 they see Letty clear as day. So my daughter actually, so we just watched 4 where she dies, and the whole movie is about Dom getting revenge for her death. And my daughter said to me, "She's like, I don't understand this movie. Every trailer we've seen, she's alive.
She's alive."
So, but we just saw her die. So, in her own 10-year-old way, she's like, "What the fuck?" And I'm like, "Yeah, it gets explained later." Another character who dies and comes back to life is Han. Han gets shot at the beginning of one of these movies. I don't remember which one. And they just showed him in the trailer coming back to life to help Dom and his crew out in this latest movie. My point is that I can accept that if they can do it in the Fast and the Furious, I can just accept that a character came back to life. I was just wondering how. If they, the way they explained it with Letty was she got shot, but like what happens when you get shot in the head? It just makes you unconscious and have amnesia.
Oh, yeah,
that's how that works.
As it does.
Yeah. I don't know how they're going to explain Han getting shot and coming back to life, but
Jesus.
Magic.
They did a seance, and they had an empty body husk. And
I'm guessing the Lazarus Pit exists in the Fast and the Furious universe.
It might. Oh boy.
So is there a rational explanation for why Jor-El came back to life, or he just never died?
I think he never died. It's been like 5 years since I've read it, but he's here, and he has been adversarial toward Cal. He kind of thinks, and I mean, we get a little bit of that here, where he's like, "What are you gonna do? Like, get a cat out of a tree or help put out a fire?" And like really putting down his contributions to the planet here. John was born during Convergence, which was a 2-month excuse of a story where DC was moving their offices from New York to LA or San Diego, wherever the hell they are in California. And so they needed to fill 2 months with some writers who weren't currently on the books. They had to just set aside a couple months. So they gave us Convergence, in which they stopped producing all of their normal books for 2 months, and they gave us Convergence, Superman number 1 and 2, and Convergence, Justice Society of America 1 and 2. It sucked, except for the Superman issues. The Superman issues were written by Dan Jurgens, And that is where Jonathan Kent was born, because Clark and Lois were living under a dome for God knows how long, and his powers were negated. So they were able to bang and have a kid. So there you go. Really cool stuff, and that's what led into the Superman, Lois, and Clark. It was supposed to be an ongoing before they decided just to make that the real Superman again. And then we're here now. We had a series called Adventures of the I think it was just called Super Sons. It was a 12-issue series. Yeah. And this was Damian Wayne, Robin, and Jonathan Kent, Superboy, teaming up, having adventures. It was a fun romp of a book. Nothing too serious, not deep stuff by any means, but they do run into the Teen Titans in it. And, when here, Jonathan is he's kind of nervous, or he's kind of upset because the Teen Titans turned him down for membership. And now we're talking about the space trip with Grandpa here, and how he wants to make Jonathan better, and Jonathan is instantly on board because the Teen Titans turned him down, told him to reapply another time. And if I'm remembering right from the Super Sons series, which again, it's been years since I've read it, I think they turned him down because he wasn't a teenager yet. Mm-hmm. I'm pretty sure because in Rebirth #1, there's Rebirth #1 is like a jam of an issue. Have you ever read Rebirth #1?
I have not read any of Rebirth.
Okay, no, it was only one issue. It was like here's the new DC, bada bing, bada boom. The Watchmen are here now. It was that. Mm-hmm. But there was a one page where it was Damian Wayne, and he walks out to a table, and there is a cake on the table with 13 candles on it. He's a teenager now. He can be a Teen Titan. That was like the big deal. And then the new Teen Titans, Damian put together the team. So he's a Teen Titan. He's a teen. And I think they turned Jonathan down because he wasn't a teen yet. But the way we're getting it framed here, it's that there's a problem with him. Mm-hmm. And that he saw an alternate world where he was a bad guy. And I mean, which superhero in the DC universe doesn't have an alternate world where they're a bad guy? Are there any? Maybe Elongated Man doesn't have an evil, analog in another world. But I mean, every DC universe character has an evil counterpart on a different Earth. I mean, Earth 3 is full of them. That's the entire point of Earth 3, the Crime Syndicate. That is the entire point of that entire world. So he's kind of like upset at the fact that he saw himself as an evil guy, and the Teen Titans said, "Hey, you're not old enough. This isn't the pre-Teen Titans." So he is totally on board with going with Grandpa because he thinks that's going to fix everything. And I mean, the thing of it is here, they kind of let Jonathan say what he's going to do. He's like, "I'm going," and Lois is like, "Well, I can't stop you." It's like, "You can't? You're his mother, and his father is Superman, who could just like put his pinky finger on the kid's head, and he's stuck." Really, you can't stop him from going with Grandpa, who he's met for like a grand total of 5 minutes, who looks like an insane, like Mad Max reject from outer space? It's what? Ridiculous. And all the while he's insulting his father? I mean, yeah, this was I don't even know what the point of this was. It was just to make Jonathan older so Bendis could reintroduce the Legion of Superheroes, which, I mean, we've been asking for a long time, just not this way. And so he could take Lois off the board for a bit to introduce a little bit of tension in Lois and Clark's marriage. So, not my favorite story here.
All right, so this wasn't all bad. Rogolzar does some fun things, to really mess with Superman. He breaks into the Fortress of Solitude. He, I guess, destroys Kandar.
He steals and destroys the bottle city of Kandar, which, I mean, Kandar has been in the Fortress of Solitude for like 150 years now. I think it's to the point where they probably realize Superman's not going to help them. So it's like, you might as well just flush him down the toilet at this point.
Like the little sea creatures, remember those?
Yeah. The sea monkeys, yeah. That's basically it, yeah.
So it's 6 issues of half of Rogolzar doing stuff and and here's the thing, this is told in a very non-linear fashion. So when it starts, they're in the middle of a fight and Superman is losing. Mm-hmm. But then we go back to, then we go to the Daily Planet. We get this extended scene of Perry just going crazy, and like we got our
set that Lois in here, and
which leads to a third thing that's happening, which the ending,
fires.
The conclusion of this made I didn't understand this at all, and I'm like, I got to the end of this, and I'm like, well, this goes in the pile of books I didn't know what I just read, and it's so. And it's so funny because it's like it's not that hard of a book to understand, but because things are incomplete. Again, goes back to my House of M complaint, where you are leaving out critical details here, sir. I don't know, like I don't have the attachment to Brian Michael Bendis that a lot of people do, longtime comic readers do, because I kind of pick up a book, I read it, it goes on the shelf, and I don't read books monthly, and I'm not I'm not a make mine Marvel guy. I'm not a make mine DC guy. I literally go to Barnes and Nobles or Books A Million or my local comic shop and go, what looks interesting? And I grab that trade and I buy that trade and I go home and I read it. Or I go to Ollie's.
You'll get a story.
or I go to Ollie's and I buy 10 of them because they're cheap.
Hopeful that one of those 10 will have a story in it.
Yeah. So you know what I mean? Like I'm not a Mets or Yankees guy like a lot of comic people are. And Jesse has found this out about me, reviewing comics for as long as we have. Because he's like, do you have a favorite writer? And I'm like, I don't know. The guy that wrote the Hulk stuff's pretty good. So I know that the Brian Michael Bendis thing was a huge deal. Jesse did an entire podcast on it when it broke. It was like when DC bought when Disney bought 20th Century Fox. I did a whole podcast on that. It was huge. Same thing with Lucasfilm. It was earth shattering when it happened. But I don't have any personal attachment to the guy. And certainly as I'm reading this, I'm like, I think my first thought was, I don't understand why people like you so much. I've now read at least 2 of your stories where you're leaving out critical bits of information and confusing me, who is the reader. And I'm just a simple bird lawyer, but I'd like to think I'm smart enough to get to one end of a comic book to the other,
and Superman comic book, no less,
and not be completely lost. So
the main problem with this is that, I mean, there are a lot of problems with this, but one that sticks out at like a surface level here is the fact that this was marketed as a miniseries. When you market something as a miniseries, that comes with an expectation that there's a beginning, middle, and end in this series. And it's not. This picks up from Action Comics number 1000, and it ends going into Action Comics 1001 and Superman Volume 5, number 1. This should have been the launch of the Bendis run in earnest. Like, this should have been Action Comics number 1001 through 1003, and Superman Volume 5, number 1 through number 3. But they had to make it Man of Steel because they had to draw the comparisons to Byrne taking over, because that's something we like to do. We have history envy as comic book aficionados and fans and enthusiasts. We need to call back to the past to show that the present is important. And the present is not important, because the past wasn't important when it was the present, or not quite as important. John Byrne taking over was something that was looked at, and I only know this secondhand from old magazines that I've collected and dipping onto old Usenet posts from back in the mid-'80s to see what people thought, to take the temperature of Byrne taking over, post-Crisis Superman being a new thing, how much of what went before happened, how much of it didn't, what is this new status quo? And it was pretty divided. Right now, when you look back at that, a lot of fans of my vintage are like, that was the best thing ever for Superman. It brought him, down to earth. It took away a lot of the crazy Silver Age powers. It was just a better, more marvelous Superman for us, for people of my age. People older than me are like, fuck that. I want Superman who can push planets. I want Superman who can blow out the sun. That's my Superman. Here with Bendis, it's not quite as sizable a shift, because we did the sizable shift already during Rebirth. Here it is, it's just like, we have a new writer now. Here's a Man of Steel miniseries. Why? Oh, because Byrne did that, and it was important then. But this isn't important. You're not changing anything fundamentally, except for the thing that you're telling us now that we never knew happened, but it did. Until the next writer comes along and says, fuck that, it didn't. comics are so fluid right now to where when you do these callbacks, it feels like the law of diminishing returns is here. Because I know if comics survive the next 10 years, there'll probably be another Man of Steel miniseries, which with whatever flavor of the month writer is going to be hopping over to DC at that point. It's just something that's going to happen again. Over on my channel, I'm talking about the X-Men books. And in the lead up to House of X and Powers of X, there would be house ads in Marvel Comics giving us all like the big, huge seminal moments of X-Men history. X-Men #1, of course. Giant-sized X-Men introducing the new team with Wolverine, Storm, Colossus, Nightcrawler, and the rest. Then it jumps all the way over everything else to Grant Morrison's first issue, New X-Men #114. And it's like these are the seminal moments, and then they give us House of X #1 as the next seminal moment. And it's like, you remember that Shawn Michaels promo after Kurt Angle left the WWE back in the day where he's like, I've faced off against the bests in the world, and they're not here anymore. There are a lot of runs in comics that are touted as being the next big thing, and we don't remember them because they weren't. This to me feels like artificially making this Superman run important in that, hey, it's a Man of Steel. Byrne had one. Bendis has one. These are big things. Byrne was a big Marvel guy coming over to DC. He was a big get. I can see the similarities. I can see the parallels. But Byrne told a story that was groundbreaking. Bendis did not. And unfortunately, with the pedigree that a title like Man of Steel has, I think it's artificially inflated to be more important than it actually is.
So I'm going to make this point, and then we're going to do a quick ad read, and then we can move on. They introduce fires being started throughout Metropolis.
Mm-hmm.
They introduce a character. She's sort of flirty with Superman. That was kind of fun.
Yes, with MM initials instead of LL ones.
Yes. And so they even bring Batman in.
Of course they do.
Because now it's a pattern, and they're trying to figure out what the pattern to these arsons are. And they, over the course of 6 issues, they come back to it once or twice. They're like, there's a fire. Superman saves some people. There's another fire. Superman saves some people. This might be a pattern. There's a third fire. Superman saves some people. Oh, it's definitely a pattern. Nothing. Superman started the fires. What?
It was always burning since the world's been turning. Yeah. It's this is something that'll play out in Action Comics 1001 through 1006. And you'll find out that, yes, it is Superman setting the fires. It is Superman setting the fires. He's having a bit of a dissonance. He's having, I don't know if we call them super fugue states, but yeah, he's starting the fires. And when we see the pattern of these fires in their full-blown glory, I bet you'll never guess what they're shaped like. Yeah. And the thing of it is, I read this. I read the 6-issue Man of Steel thing, and I put it down, and I'm like, okay. Well, I'm still going to buy Action Comics because I own like the past 650 of them. So, okay, I have to keep buying Action Comics. And the fact that I was actually so proud of DC for giving us an issue 1001, because I thought they were going to get to 1,000 and then restart the numbering again. So I was like, ooh, we got a 1001. I got to support this. So I was collecting them, and I still am, of course, because I'm an idiot. And I got the first 12 issues together, and I'm like, you know what, fuck it, I'm going to read it. I'm going to read this and see how I like it. And I read the first 6 issues, and I actually did a podcast on it over on me and Reggie's old Patreon page, which I don't even know if I still have that episode. Maybe I'll have to check the old hard drive. But it was basically just me freestyling through these 6 issues. And I came out of it thinking, wow, this might be okay. And in gearing up for this episode, I went back to my blog, which I covered the first issue of Man of Steel on there, and I looked at my thoughts, and my thoughts were like, hey, I think Superman's in good hands after reading the first issue. And I was like, wow, I was really positive on this shit. And I was trying to figure out when it all went wrong. And I'm a comic reader who will take out the sins of the son on the father. which is to say, if something I read I hate right now, I have problems revisiting the older stuff and enjoying it and appreciating it the same way. So if Superman sucks right now, it's hard for me to go back and read old Superman, despite the fact that I love a lot of that stuff. It's just a kink or a thing that I have. That's a real deficit when you try to be a fake-ass comics historian, where you're biased against reading things that you ought to. But in knowing everything that came after this, it was hard for me to go back. I mentioned the Secret Identity. I don't even know if the Secret Identity is still out, because as soon as they announced that was happening, I stopped reading. I couldn't do it, because it's like, that's the Bendis thing. That is just like, oh, we're going to unmask somebody. We're going to take away a secret identity. We're going to make this comic book less comic booky. We're going to undo everything. I mean, if you've ever read Superman Bronze Age stories, have you? Have you read anything from like the 70s from Superman?
Yeah, as a matter of fact, we reviewed the issue where Superman fights Muhammad Ali.
Okay, but like an actual issue.
I'm going to go ahead and say no.
Well, if you read a Bronze Age Superman story, there's like an 85% chance that the entire point of the issue is him protecting the secret identity. It's to the point where it's almost parody, where it's like, ooh, there's a new copy boy, and oh, he might have figured it out. Or, oh, there's a psychic coming to Metropolis, and wait, he's looking at Clark weird. Every issue was him protecting the secret identity. So here we are, no more secret identity. And to me, even if it's something that gets swept under the rug, it loses so much. And I thought about this when thinking about Civil War, because we had Spider-Man unmasked during Civil War. And then they put that genie back into the bottle during One More Day. So we had like the span of like a year or two where everybody knew Peter Parker was Spider-Man. And this was not a dream. This was not a hoax. This was not an imaginary story. This was the 616 Marvel. Everyone knew Peter Parker was Spider-Man. So you put that genie back in the bottle. But you can't, because you took away the element of what if. Even if, and I can't say with any kind of certainty whether or not they put the genie back in the bottle for Clark Kent and Superman. They did it in the New 52. They had him outed in the New 52. Lois reported it, and it went all over the place. But that went away with Rebirth. And that was a different DC universe. That was a different world. That was a younger Superman, a Superman that we didn't have the same attachment to as we do this one. So even if they put that genie back in the lamp, we already know how people are going to react. Because I think that's kind of the main thing when a secret identity is about to be outed. We worry. What's J. Jonah Jameson going to say when he finds out his photographer has been Spider-Man for all these years? What's going to happen? Well, we know that already now. So we're not scared of that anymore. What's going to happen when Aunt May finds out? Well, she's found out 4 times already. We're not going to have to worry about that anymore. All of these. What about the villains? What about the Kingpin? What's he going to think about? What's Lex Luthor going to think about when he finds out Superman's Clark Kent? Perry White, all of these people. Well, we don't have to worry about that anymore because we already know. So you can't put that kind of thing away. And I see that as only damaging the property here. Which brings me to the fact that DC doesn't give a rat's ass about the property. All they care about is that S in the shield that they can stick on shit. They don't care about the comics because nobody cares about the comics. So they could do whatever the fuck they want. While the comics industry and while their comics division is bleeding, they're just waiting for it to take that last step and then the blood to drain out and it to go face first into the dirt. And unfortunately, things like this are only hastening it.
All right, let's take a pause for the cause here and talk about
Sure.
Grammarly. Grammarly's AI-powered products help people communicate more effectively. Grammarly helps you write mistake-free on Gmail, Facebook, Twitter, LinkedIn, and nearly anywhere else you write on the web. Grammarly corrects hundreds of grammar, punctuation, and spelling mistakes while also catching contextual errors, improving your vocabulary, and suggesting style improvements. To download Grammarly today, go to getgrammarly.com/W2Mnetwork. Again, that's getgrammarly.com/W2Mnetwork to download Grammarly for free. All right, so we've our first story starts in a different comic book and gets resolved with Clark loses an
Another
argument.
different comic.
Well, so Clark loses an argument, and and his son and his daughter take off with Grandpa to go live the life fantastic in space, and he's sad.
He does hug a teddy bear.
And then we have another story which starts in this book, but doesn't end in this book. It goes into another book which has to do with the fires, and none of it is explained. And so all that's left is Superman versus Doomsday 2 Electric Boogaloo. Mm-hmm. And so Doomsday 2 Electric Boogaloo goes to the Fortress of Solitude, and he destroys Kandor and breaks his communicator. So now he can't call his wife, and his wife might think, well, he's just not calling me, which I guess will be dealt with in yet another comic book. You can't see it right now, but I'm doing the thing with my hand where it's a gun, and I'm putting it in my mouth and shooting it.
And you know, I mentioned that this doesn't work as a miniseries. It could have worked as a one-shot. If you do a one-shot where it's like, hey, this is the hub of this new beginning. Mm-hmm. This is this is Superman loses an argument in the kitchen #1, and we're gonna just lump everything in here because I mean that's an old comics trope where it's like here's the launch off point, one book. So all you're doing is investing $4 to $5 in this one book. Well, maybe 6 or 7 because of the Bendis tax. But I mean, you're spending just amount of money on one book. From here, you can decide, okay, I can go to Superman. I can go to Action Comics if I want to. And if I don't, I'm only out the amount of time it took me to read one single issue and the amount of money it costs to pay for one single issue. When you stretch this out to 6 issues, which didn't need to be 6 issues. I mean, you don't need me to tell anybody that this is current year comics, and Bendis is an architect of decompression, so we didn't need 6 issues for this. But the fact that it was stretched out quite as long as it was, costing as much as it did, it's hard to reconcile that we're not getting a story here. Okay, so all we're doing is getting the vignettes.
I'm going to set you up here. Okay, I'm gonna bump a ball really to the sweet spot on the net for you to fucking Sheehan spike the son of a bitch. Okay? So the resolution to the main story of this book, which is that Rogol Zaar has come to kill Superman and Supergirl as the last Kryptonians on Earth, and he's doing all of these things to draw them out into a big fight. And they have a big fight, and Superman gets his ass kicked. But you know who saves the day? Supergirl. You know how she saves the day? Phantom Zone.
Phantom Zone.
So, in a book that seems to be more concerned with tearing down Superman than building him up, which is weird because you called it the Man of Steel, which seems like, I know that that's just one of his nicknames, like the Dark Knight, but I think when you evoke the Man of Steel, there's a reverence, and when I read the book, this is absent reverence. This is yet another one of these deconstructions of Superman, but not in a thoughtful way like they tried to do with Grounded, where at least there was an attempt, as we talked about. This is more of, I want to, use the term bleeding of the company. Superman must represent DC Comics then, because it seems like they're more concerned with trying to bleed Superman out slowly, and poke holes in his armor than they are in telling a fun story with this legacy character. And so in his own book, featuring him, he loses his wife and kid. He's starting fires in some sort of... He's an arsonist. In some sort of... Which again, not explained well, but it's there, so just for the sake of this conversation. Loses his wife and kids. He's starting fires he doesn't know he's doing. And he's saved by Supergirl from the big monster. So Superman gets to do nothing and looks as limp dick as humanly possible. They did everything in this book but have Lex Luthor throw him over a pool table, dip his hand in grease, and say, you know what I've always wondered?
Prostate of Steel.
That is an Oz reference for anyone who didn't get it. Mark that on your bingo cards, everybody. Chris, let us conclude by you explaining to me why it was necessary to all but rape Superman over a pool table in this book.
The only thing I can figure is this is Bundy, Splash, and Hogan. We need to make the villain look strong here. We need to make the our protagonist look flawed. We need to make him look as though that there is a chance that he'll lose. Because it's Superman, and it's hard to write Superman. So what do when you have to write Superman? You just go the other way. You know, it's like, these are all the things you do in a Superman story. It's like, nope, not doing any of that shit. We're doing everything but. He's going to, like you said, lose his family to a psychopath father. Just like, yeah, we're going to take you to a ship. We're going to take you to a ship, and you're just going to live here until you're retroactively aged. Ridiculous shit. His wife, I mean, maybe this is revenge for Grounded. Maybe she's like, hey, fuck it, you went for a walk. I'm going to space. At least I get a book out of it. So maybe that's what it is. And you know, God bless him if that was a callback, but we don't do editorial footnotes anymore because those are too comic booky, so nobody would know if that was the case. Anyway, he's a sleepwalking arsonist, and he gets his ass kicked like 2 or 3 times by Rogolzar, right? He gets beat up on the moon where Supergirl has to come and save him, and then at the end he gets beaten up and then the Phantom Zone happens. I mean, and then Superman's like, no, why did we do that? Why did you put him in the Phantom Zone? That's too cruel. It's like, what? I like Rogolzar needed to be holding a big gun for Superman to like put a flower in the barrel of. I mean, this is just, it's not good Superman. And I mean, one of the things that caught me, and it caught me today when I read it as well, has nothing to do with Superman and more of a Bendis tick that made me want to vomit. Superman gets beat up to the point where the Justice League have to like put him in a bed and stand over him so he doesn't get out of this bed. And the Flash, he says that Superman is caca poo poo. Mm-hmm. Caca motherfucking poo poo. Bendis, stop. No, we don't need Barry Allen saying caca poo poo. We don't need anybody in a comic book saying that, ever.
I'm so confused. I'm so confused, Chris. I don't understand why DC is in such a state where they're having a hard time selling comics to the point where there's now a rumor that they might get bought by Disney. I don't understand.
It's like,
why can't they find an audience?
Oh my God, because it's they can't stick the landing here. This was a big complaint during the DiDio days, is that DC would not use. You know, it's like sometimes when you're a tactician, you go by your brain, right? You go by what worked before, and you just go on that path, and you remain you err a little bit on the conservative side because you know what works. You're not going to take too many chances, but you will take chances every now and again. And when you do, they're going to be huge because they're going to be events. They're going to be happenings. DC, for the past 15 years, has been the guy who walks outside, licks their finger, puts it in the air, and is like, oh, well, the wind's blowing that way today. Let's change everything. And that's what they've been doing, back and forth, back and forth. The pendulum is bipolar. It only works in right angles here. It's either all the way to the right or all the way to the left. It doesn't just tick in the middle where we're just telling stories, things that work, paying tribute to what's happened before. It's either, hey, you know what? We're going to make these things so continuity laden that nobody will be able to read these except for like 5 people. Everybody will be able to read them, but only like 5 or 10 people are actually going to be able to appreciate every detail we put in here. Or fuck continuity. These people don't know each other yet, and we're going to get 5 new readers who are going to accidentally stumble drunkenly into a comic book store with a $5 bill in their hand, and the dealer is just going to take the 5 and put a comic in their hand and leave them to die. This is just what DC does. It's not organic. It's not anything that builds onto itself, and it's not outreaching. DC made they did the DC Giants, the Walmart books, which people saw as, ooh, they're reaching out to real people. These are people who are in Walmart. They're going to be in Walmart, if you're anything like me, twice a week buying your damn groceries. So they're going to pass these DC books and then be like, ooh, Justice League, ooh, The Flash, I'm going to grab this. Those DC Giants were $5, which to me, that's not a way to get new readers. People may disagree, but I don't think of $5 for printed material as an impulse buy. And so DC got a lot of credit for that. But if you were to look on social media, it was all us 40 and 50-year-old guys hoarding this shit and trying to sell it on eBay. That's all it was. We were the ones buying this shit, and we were selling it for 3 or 4 times the price on eBay. Not me personally, but people of my ilk, people of my vintage. DC doesn't know how to reach people. And then you have a name like Bendis come over who maybe, I mean, he's a big name to us. You know, I don't know how big a name he is to the mainstream. He's not a Mark Miller with a whole bunch of Netflix shows, right? He's not a Gerard Way with a Netflix show. He's a guy with comics. And I mean, he created Jessica Jones, but I don't know how much input he had on the show. And I don't know how much credit he got on the show. Maybe he got a little byline at the end created by, you know, Gatos and Bendis or whatever. But I don't know that this is something, I mean, because this is a number one. This is something that touts a new era. If you're a brand new reader, just like you are, relatively speaking, to this era, you pick this up and you're like, what is this? Why can't DC just tell a story? Why can't they just tell a story that could be appreciated by new people and people who've been here forever? It's a hard tightrope act. It certainly is, and both companies are guilty of it, because no matter how many times you put out a Fantastic Four #1 doesn't negate the fact that there are like 650 other issues of Fantastic Four out there. And it's hard to write that in such a way where it's inviting and not tedious. You go back to the 80s, and I mean, we make jokes about it. Every time you open an issue of X-Men, it's like Wolverine with his keenly sharp, razor sharp, unbreakable adamantium claws, you know, and we make jokes about that. It's like, yeah, we know, we get it. But those were written for people who never read a comic book before. So on one page, they see, oh, this is Rogue, and this is what she does. This is Wolverine, this is what he does. Oh, Cyclops does that. I get it. I can read the rest of this single issue and know who these people are and know what they do. Whether I pick up the next issue is irrelevant. I can understand and appreciate this issue because they put in the effort to introduce these characters. They don't do that anymore. And at DC especially, because, I mean, right now, how many super characters do we have running around DC Comics? How many imprints do we have at DC Comics right now where nobody knows which Superman's real? Nobody knows which Batman is. Is it the Black Label one that's real? Is it the regular DC one that's real? What's real and what's not? Which one do we need to worry about? Which one is going to continue past this story? And the answer is any of them that sell. You know? The Black Label one, it's sold, so here's more Black Label shit that has nothing to do with the main Batman. Then you have the what is it? The one they just did, the Shattered Dimension. What the hell was it? It was going to be 5G, the New Frontiers or whatever the hell it was. You have the New Frontiers, the next Batman. That's continuing past the event because it sold well at $8 an issue. It just doesn't matter anymore. They don't care. This is all very, very short-term thinking here. They know that they can milk a certain group of us, and they're going to do it until the wheels are absolutely falling off. And that's why DC is the way it is right now. And who's to say in a year and a half they can be like, oh, wait a minute, we need to do something new again, or we need to do something old again, because the old people on Twitter aren't following us anymore. So let's bring back the red underpants, and we'll make all jokes about how Superman's wearing the red underpants again. Stupid shit like that. It's a disaster, and I'm not confident that DC will be around in any number of years. It's sad but true.
I have to say, I was really disappointed by this because I picked this up thinking it was a self-contained story.
A story?
And you're right. It's a bridge between two other things, which I probably wouldn't have bought it if I'd known that. But I mean, but the other side of that is, like, I was reading the New 52 trades for Harley Quinn. Mm-hmm. And within that story, there was a side miniseries that she did with Power Girl, which I also read.
Yep, with Vartox.
Yeah. And it was fun, and I enjoyed reading it. And I've suggested Jesse maybe talking about it just, you know, like just for fun, because I enjoyed it so much. But, you know, God forbid I enjoy a comic, right? But here's the thing. They did it in a way where they addressed it in the main book, and they were like, if you want to know what happened to her in Power Girl, go read this. If you don't,
don't worry about it.
Yeah, don't worry about it. It's not that important to what we're going to do next.
Mm-hmm.
Just know that's why Power Girl's mad at Harley. Okay. And I was like, I love Power Girl. Power Girl and Harley seem hilarious together. I'm going to check this out. But if you're like, no thanks, you could just keep reading the Harley trade. Or vice versa. Because if you weren't reading the Harley trade, they went on this like crazy, sexy space expedition, the two of them, which was hilarious. And when it was over and they just went back to like the main story, it was like, okay, well, if I don't care about the main story, I'm now done at least with this romp with Harley and Power Girl.
Yep. Mm-hmm. Which everyone should pick up because it has Vartox in it.
So my point being that we've done a couple of different trades over the past year where they were self-contained. There was a Wonder Woman book that me and Alexis covered. It was a self-contained story by like an Eisner winner. It was fine, but that's the thing is like I pick up stuff that I want to be self-contained, and I thought that's what this was going to be, and so I think what I'm trying to say is I get the argument that you're making about this book where it's not so much that it's bad writing, at least in terms of what's not told or told in the story and it feeling incomplete, because if you read Action Comics and then continue to read Action Comics then you'll get the whole story, which was the counter argument I got about House of M. And I went, okay, I get that, but then I wouldn't have read it in the first place. And therein lies the problem with this. You promised me a Superman story with Brian Michael Bendis and marketed it as a self-contained story, and it's not. It's a bridge. And so all I'm left with is a story that doesn't make that either didn't make sense or was so thin. I was like, you needed 6 issues to tell the story of Superman getting beaten up by this alien and saved by his cousin with the Phantom Zone thing?
Yep.
Which they could have done on page 1.
They could have.
This could have been like 2 pages. Yeah. Rogozar, I am here to kill the Kryptonians. Go get the Phantom Zone gun. Okay. Zap.
The end. What a hard day.
A story about... Look, I'm up for a story about Superman not being able to, Superman's grandfather taking Superman's son away because of this, that, and the other thing. If you write it well, I'm up for that. I'm up for Superman feeling like Superman having kind of a nervous breakdown and having fugue states where he doesn't know he's out there setting fires, and maybe explaining it like he's setting these fires so that he has a reason to save people. I'm up for that story, too.
Sure.
I'm not up for a part of one of those stories, another part of the other story, a slice of this third story, and nothing being resolved.
Yep.
Or taking too long to resolve it. And that's really that's my last word on Man of Steel. This was like 2 half stories and 1 thin story told over 6 issues that, if all things being equal, any one of those things could have been done better. Sure. And it just wasn't very good, Like, I finished reading it, and I was like, I know what I'm going to talk about, but, this was kind of like, if I didn't have a podcast where I was going to talk about this book, I would have read it and be like, would have given it my Goodreads score and put it back on my shelf, and I would have never thought about it again.
Yep. Absolutely. Now, I think since comics have adopted the TV DVD model of like everything being in print all the time, which is a good thing here, but it makes it so the stuff on our shelves isn't as important as it used to be. It's not going to be as evergreen as some of the things that we have up there. The things like the Ronins, the Watchmens, all the old stuff that, on the rare occasion that DC or Marvel would put out a collected edition or even an original graphic novel, it's just like, ooh, that's on my shelf, and I can revisit that whenever I want. Man of Steel? Well, yeah, I might revisit the Byrne one, but I'm not revisiting this. I mean, it's just back in the day, when they do a collected edition, they would take out all the ancillary shit. So, like the first volume of the Grant Morrison Doom Patrol, we read that here, and there were bits and pieces of that, like one-page little things that would hint at what's to come. Like here's a cameo of Lodestone, and we're gonna follow up with her like in 2 volumes, but she's still out there. So this is a thing we need to know about because this is a monthly serialized comic book. In the first edition of the Grant Morrison Doom Patrol, they pulled that page out because that had nothing to do with the story we were reading in that one trade. Because these trades were just meant as one-offs, and if they work, they work. If not, they don't. But here we're taking out this material that has nothing to do with crawling from the wreckage, and you don't need to like question like what the hell who is this? Why is this page here? They would actually go to the effort to remove that kind of stuff. Now it's like the exact opposite. Now we read a trade and it's like, okay, well here's a hint at shit that's going on in like 6 different series, and I mean that goes to your House of M. Mm-hmm. It's like here's hints and things to. There had to have been at least a dozen miniseries for House of M. So it's like you can go here, you can go there, you can go there, and they forget to tell the ongoing story here. So much of it has to be supported to the point where I think the House of M trades have like a spine that if you put them all together, they make a shape. They make the little House of M shape in the bottom of the spine. So if you want your shelf to look cool, you have to buy all of them. And if you want an actual story, you need to buy all of them. It's just the way things are done now. So, like I said earlier, if this were a one-shot, you understand that a one-shot is a promo. A one-shot has long been the promo, even, recently with DC Rebirth #1, like I've mentioned 500 times today. That's basically a promo for every single DC comic that followed. So it's like you had 2 pages of Damian. If you want to follow Damian's story, go buy Teen Titans. We've got Wally West back. If you want to follow his story, read regular Titans. We got Mr. Oz showing up. You want to find out what his story is? Read Action and Superman. We got these Gotham guy and Gotham gal. If you want to find out what they're doing, read Batman. All this stuff was going on to facilitate the spread of the new take on the DC universe, where this was not that. This was a 6-issue dredge to send us in several different directions from several different directions. Just
here's the thing:
it's a bridge.
If it worked, if it worked, this is the last thing I'm going to say.
Sure.
If that worked and people were like, and DC sales were up, I probably wouldn't. I would complain from a narrative point of view.
Sure.
That this stuff is hard to follow.
Business-wise, it makes sense.
Yeah. But if they were actually selling books and they weren't on the verge of being sold off themselves, it sounds like, I would say, okay, I get what you're doing, and it's kind of like my arguments about movies with some of my fellow movie reviewers, where it's like, why do we need a 9th Fast and the Furious movie? Because they all make $1 billion. That's why.
That's it.
That's it. Why do we need a Hobbs and Shaw spinoff? Because the Fast and the Furious movies with them in it made $1 billion. That's why. Mm-hmm. However, I'm trying to think of a movie that bombed recently. Like the Mortal Kombat movie's probably getting a sequel anyway. There are movies that, Ghostbusters 2016, right?
Okay.
They had planned to kick off a new franchise with that.
Mm-hmm.
It bombed. It didn't do well.
But it had 115% on Rotten Tomatoes.
Yeah. Well, okay. Sony had planned to kick off an entirely new franchise with the 4 women Ghostbusters, and of course the movie bombs, and plans are abandoned, and they bring Ivan Reitman back, and now we're getting a Ghostbusters 3. And I don't want to get into all of that, but my point is, when things do badly, they don't keep doing more of it. They change tactics and do something else.
Sure.
Part of the reason why Warner Brothers lost faith in Zack Snyder, and even before he left Justice League, had told him, you can't do what you want to do with Justice League, you have to cut it down, was because Batman v Superman did not make $1 billion, and they lost money on it. It made $700 million, but it was projected to do like $1 billion, and
mm-hmm.
it didn't sell as well as they wanted it to.
Okay.
So my point being, if DC Comics and their way of like, we're not going to tell self-contained stories, we're going to tell these sprawling stories that force people to buy our entire catalog of comics, works, and people were doing that in large numbers, I would just kind of shrug my shoulders and go, all right, I guess I'll stick to independent comics that have a definitive beginning, middle, and end, because I can't follow any of this shit. Or I'll find the one-off trades that don't connect to anything else. Like, I bought a Flash one recently within the past 6 months, and it was like a collection of different annuals, and that's all it was.
Okay.
Again, a self-contained trade collection of previously printed materials that was by and large isolated from the main Flash continuity. Okay, fine. And I read a nice little Flash story, and I did my review on it on Goodreads, and I was done, and it went back on my shelf.
Yep.
I would just stick to that. But here's the thing, and this is what we've been talking about. They're not retaining readers. They're losing readers by and large.
Yeah.
So you have a handful of hardcore comic readers that will, in fact, buy everything. But that's kind of like, what we talk about with wrestling. Yeah, you have a niche fandom, but it's the nichest of nichest fandoms.
Mm-hmm.
And you're not, and you don't have nearly as many fans as there used to be, and therefore you're not selling like you used to. I mean, granted, the WWE still finds a way to make money,
sure,
with ads and licensing out IP. But the larger point is, if you can't put butts in seats and you can't sell merch, you're not going to make any money. And so you can't keep doing the same things over and over and over again. So that's really it. Anything else about this book? If not, we'll close up shop.
No, just one more thing on what you just said there. It's the readership is dwindling, and a lot of that I think has to do with the fact that and this is something that people complained about in the 90s here, and it was the fact that if you wanted to read X family of books here, you needed to read all of them. If you wanted to be an X-Men fan, you needed to read like 8 books a month, which that was like $16 back then, if that. So that's not you barely get 4 books for that nowadays, but it was doable, but it still was an investment in time and an effort and an enthusiasm. And if DC is doing that, where we have to do, if you want one, you need them all. And not only that, you need to read these different versions of the characters, because not only are we like printing these in weird ways where we have variant covers that are going to be worth a lot of money this week only, but it's like we're going to put a first appearance in this weird book. So then all the comic collector apps are going to be like, "Ooh, this one's worth $50. It came out yesterday, but it's worth $50." So people are going to come and buy it. The sprawl, the gimmicks, the bullshit. I think they see this as jumping on points where the numbers, anecdotally and factually, have proven that it's a jumping off point. I think a lot of comic readers are kind of like me, where you do have to be all or nothing. You're in or you're out. So if I suddenly wasn't buying one Superman comic, I wouldn't be buying any Superman comic. If I stopped reading one X book, I would not buy any X books. It's either all or nothing. So when you push one of us out the door, and they're pushing us out the door more and more, and this has nothing to do with like our ages or our interests, this is just dollars and cents, basically. Dollars, cents, and time. And space, the things that we don't have control over. It's a mess. And the more of us that are leaving, I don't know if they just think that they're right and they need to keep going this way. We have ballless editors. I shouldn't say ballless, or women editors, but we have editors who are afraid to talk to the celebrity writers. They can't tell them, hey, that story doesn't work, or hey, this gimmick doesn't work, and hey, maybe don't do that, because who's going to tell Bendis no? Nobody. And so we get stories like this, and we get stories where, Clark takes the glasses off, and people are leaving, and they're not going to come back, because if they do try to come back, the prices are going to be $1 or $2 more expensive anyway. DC's comics right now, for the most part, are $5 now. They're not $3.99 anymore. They're $4.99 since we came back from wherever the hell we were, the New Frontier shit. Like, if you want to buy an issue of Batman, that's $5. 2 issues of Batman come out a month, so that's $10 you're spending on Batman 1 month. It's not good. Not good sign.
I do like the mentality. Last thing, and I'm immediately going to go into an ad read. But But I love the mentality of what's our goal? Our goal is to sell funny books to people. Okay. What's in these funny books? Legacy heroes that people love. Okay. Well, how are we going to sell them these books? What are we going to do with them? I don't know. I was thinking that we'd lay them all down on the floor and shit on them. just ruin them. Just tear them down. Just deconstruct them. Strip them away of anything that people like about them, because that's interesting storytelling.
Yep. Alan Moore did it 45 years ago, and people liked it back then. So let's do it everywhere.
Have you ever read Top 10, by the way?
Some of it.
Ugh. I don't think I've hated a comic more than I've hated that one.
Alan Moore's ABC stuff is very hot and cold. Yeah. Very, he had Promethea in there where he was like really jerking himself off on his magic stuff. Tom Strong was okay. And Tom Strong was actually brought into the main DC universe not too long ago. Maybe it was long ago. It's been a long time since I paid attention. But the ABC stuff was weird. Top 10, that's with Gene Ha on the art, I believe. I think I read the first issue of it, and I didn't read on, so that might say everything we need to say.
I just finished the trade, and it is... I got about halfway through it, and then I just started skim reading it just to say that I completed the thing. But it is a long, meandering, up its own ass slog. And I'm like, holy cow. You know, stop letting Alan Moore do whatever he wants, because he's an out-of-control maniac when he does.
It's funny. Those books were... an imprint for Jim Lee and Wildstorm, because Alan Moore didn't want to do anything with Marvel or DC, and he's like, oh, I can do Image stuff. He did a lot of Image stuff, more Image stuff than I think a lot of people know about, including like Wildcats and Youngblood and shit. But he was doing this ABC line for Jim Lee. Then Jim Lee sells to DC. And so Alan Moore's stuff started coming out from DC again, and he was not too pleased.
Yeah. All right. So I want to remind everybody to check out our Amazon link in the description page. We have been hawking Amazon Music for a while now because we love it. We use it on the Metal Hammer of Doom. I stream music from there all the time. And you can get a free 30 days on us if you click the link. So if you're listening to this on your cell phone or you're listening to this on a tablet through a podcatcher, it's right there. Look at your damn phone or your tablet. Move the description up underneath where it says play. You'll see a description of what we're talking about, and underneath that is the link to getamazonmusic.com/W2M network. If you click it, you sign up, you get a free 30 days. You don't like it, you got a free 30 days of unlimited amount of music. You know how much music I can listen to in 30 days if I don't have to pay for it? Oh my god.
Lots.
Oh, shit tons. I have discovered all kinds of music that I never would have, even in my days of going to Tower Records and hanging out at the listening station. You know, if you go into the rabbit hole of just clicking through things, you can find all kinds of music, music that you would have never found under any other way. So, get AmazonMusic.com, get your free /W2M network, get your free 30 days. Listen to things you like, discover things you've never heard of. Have a great time on us here at the Radulich Broadcasting Network in W2M. And with that, that is our review of The Man of Steel. Someday, you and I are going to read a book, and we're going to talk about it, and we're going to gush.
Maybe.
You and I are going to figure this out one day. We're going to find a book we both liked and just want to talk about and say, how wonderful is this book, man?
Maybe. I mean, we really both loved that Ultimate Warrior Christmas special. So
we really did. We really did. I have all 4 of them now. I have the entire run of the Ultimate Warrior. Let's talk about that one day.
Yeah, maybe that'll be a Christmas tradition. It'll always be Christmas with the Warrior.
In the meantime, here's what's going on. Tonight, we're doing another comic book. This time we're doing Invincible Volume 2. 8 is enough. Jesse is threatening to come back and talk Invincible. Even though he's still essential, he's making an appearance on his own show that I took over for him while he was being essential. So we're reviewing the show this week, so therefore we are looking at yet another comic. And you can check out his syndicated source material from Invincible Volume 1, which is in the archives. Tomorrow, it's a double dose of me and Robert Winfrey. First, we're discussing Castlevania Season 4, and then in the evening, he's going to push me in the pool, and he's going to take over the Metal Hammer of Doom, and we are talking Galacticraken Starship Velociraptor, which is Joshua Young, I think. He's on Amazon Music and Spotify or whatever. Does a whole bunch of like rock and roll Disney covers and stuff like that. Well, he has this fake band, Galacticraken, and this fake album, Starship Velociraptor, which Robert wants us to listen to and talk about, so we're going to do that. Ronnie Adams is making his monthly appearance on the Radulich Broadcasting Network. He and I are going to talk about Invincible Season 1 on Amazon Prime. And then on Thursday, myself and Pat Mullen are starting up a new series. We finished the history of heavyweight boxing, and now we are looking at the four kings of boxing. Roberto Duran, Tommy Hearns, Marvelous Marvin Hagler, and Sugar Ray Leonard. They defined an entire era of boxing. Roberto Duran knocked out a horse, Christopher Sheehan. He one punch knocked out a horse. He's my and he also won a world title by punching a guy in the nuts.
What'd the horse ever do to him?
Probably made fun of his mother. I don't know.
Roberto Duran are notorious for that.
Yeah, Roberto Duran has kind of a messed up childhood. So and horses are notorious for insulting people. So who knows what could have happened?
Yeah,
anyway,
your mom is so fat. What? No.
So yeah, he's my new hero for punching out a horse. Anyway, so we're starting off with Roberto Duran this Thursday night. Also, the Dark Side of the Ring is running their episode about the Ultimate Warrior. A&E just did an Ultimate Warrior show. It was sort of the WWE doing a, everyone said the WWE did a hit job on Randy Savage. This is the opposite on the Ultimate Warrior. They really tried to clean up his story as best they could. Now the other side will be told. Dark Side of the Ring is airing their Ultimate Warrior episode, so we are running our Unsolved Mysteries episode from the archives. Pat and I were going to start a series of Unsolved Mysteries, what happened in wrestling history, and we started off with the Ultimate Warrior's title run, kind of doing a deep dive into that, and we never went back to it. So it's the one and only episode of Unsolved Wrestling Mysteries, Ultimate Warrior. We're going to re-air that Thursday.
So you're not going to find out who lifted the briefcase?
No. The next episode was supposed to be on Ric Flair, and we just never did it. This Friday, we're re-airing our review of Maleficent, and Jeff Sloboda allegedly is coming back, and we will be reviewing the new Michael B. Jordan, Tom Clancy movie, Without Remorse. Saturday, finally, another syndicated source material, What If Spider-Man Kept His Cosmic Powers? Go back in the archives and check out our reviews of Luke Cage, Season 1, Jupiter's Legacy, Volume 1, Spiral, Saliva Every 20 Years, X-Men number 11, Jupiter's Legacy, Season 1, Impact, Under Siege, WrestleMania Backlash, Batman v Superman, MODOK Assassin, Army of the Dead, and the Zombies trilogy, Zombies 1 and 2, and Aquarium of the Dead. And finally, a re-airing of our Long Road to Ruin, Missing in Action, with Pat Mullen. All right, that's all my plugs. Christian, take me home, baby doll.
Yes. Every day there's something at the Chris and Reggie Radio Network, chrisandreggie.podbean.com. Most of the days it's X-Lapsed, taking a look at a current year X-Men book, tearing it up, and talking to listeners. It's a really, really good time. So if you have any interest or any curiosity about the current year X stuff, that's it's one of the places you can go for it. Also, me and Chris Bailey are back with Quester Days finally. I took my sweet time getting my shit together. So it's been sitting at one episode since like August. I mean, it's been a long-ass time. But finally, episode 2 came out just yesterday as of this recording, and we're looking to put out hopefully at least 2 episodes a month. We don't want to set ourselves up for failure. So we're going to take it slow, but we're back in the groove, having a great time doing that. And hopefully, if you have any interest in ElfQuest, particularly the original ElfQuest, give it a listen. It's Quester Days over at chrisandreggie.podbean.com. You can find a bunch of stuff at chrisisoninfiniteearths.com, and you can find me on Twitter at Ace Comics.
All right, folks, thanks for listening to Two Eyes Yell About Comics. For Christian, I'm Mark Radulich. Be well, be safe, and behave.